Today is Thursday, December 7th, 2023, and it's what, a couple weeks away from the big holiday, 3 weeks away, 3 weeks away. But I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on Kiwanis Let's Talk. This is Sue Peterson from Michigan. Um, Before we started up the program today, I put in the chat a couple new links for you. One is the tinyurl.com that goes to backslash MIK YouTube, which is the Michigan District of Kiwanis YouTube page, where these videos are stored after or the recordings are restored afterwards. The one for the dues is up there, the two on AI, and the workshop that we had last week on Kiwanis Club websites is there. So those are available for anyone to watch again or to share with your clubs. I also put the link in there for tinyurl.com backslash Kiwanis LT. That is the main registration for Kiwanis Let's Talk. So it's a registration link for new people. For those of you that are already registered, that link, once you're registered and you get one email from us, you're going to get the rest of the emails as well along the way. So I should put in clarify, it's for new people that want to join us. I will also be sending out an email later this evening to all the executive directors and district secretaries in the United States, North America, and then one for all the global directors to let them know about the Kiwanis Let's Talk program and how it's continuing. We have one more week with us this year. We're going to meet next week, and Brad Boyd, who's on with us today, and I are going to do a program on simple Kiwanis Club projects that clubs can do. I've gathered some, and Brad, I'll send you some information that I pulled together on projects that clubs can do at their meetings. That's been a request. And then we will start back up on January 4th. We will our first program will be on the Kiwanis International Board and the role of the International Board. And I've reached out to some past board members to talk about the role of the International Trustee and the International Board to give everyone an idea for that. Originally, we had planned on starting right out with the International Vice President candidates and the trustee candidates at the Denver conference in July. And after talking with Kiwanis International and Paul Palazzolo and Stan today, because the International Board will have not finished their work on the amendments and bylaws before the trustees and the vice president candidates have their time, we're going to push them back a little bit so that the people that are running for vice presidents, who are the people that are on the board now, have time to have the understanding and help make the decisions about what amendments are coming to the House. So we're going to push those back a few weeks. I'll make some adjustments there, but I have reached out to some other individuals to fill those spots. So it's not like we're gonna go blank. We'll just push those back a little bit, and that will give us a chance as well to share some of that information. I also I was on a call yesterday with the past international presidents and have reached out to them for some workshop and program material. I have talked to Dave Curry, who will be doing a workshop for us in March. And I realize it's a couple months away, but his club in Butte, Montana is working on how to build their club with corporate members. And he has some work that they're going to do, and they've been doing it. So it'll give them a couple months of additional information that they can bring in to share with us on how they're looking at rebuilding and building their club with corporate membership. So we'll have that for us in March. So this evening, we are happy to have back with us Bryce Kinder, our Director of Member Experiences from Kiwanis International. And I see that Tom Costanza is back with us as well to provide some backup support there. So I am recording today's session. So Bryce, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sue. I appreciate it. It's good to see everybody tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to be back with you all again this week. And so for those of you who weren't with us last week or who maybe I haven't met before, again, my name is Bryce Kinder. I'm a member of the information technology team at Kiwanis International. Some of you I have worked with in the past. I've been in the organization or with the organization for 21 years. And in most of that time, I was a staff member with the member services team at the Kiwanis International office. In the last year, I've transferred into a different role with the IT department. And my role as a member experience technology engineer really just means that I'm segueing my knowledge or my experience with my interactions with members and utilizing that to make sure that the technology that Kiwanis creates is takes into account member feedback, is always directed and responsive to member needs and club leader needs. And so I count myself as an advocate for the member and club leader viewpoint for technology that's created for clubs to be able to use. And so um, that's kind of my experience and kind of my responsibilities on that team. But tonight we're going to talk about cybersecurity, and that's obviously something as members we all have to deal with. Just by show of hands, I guess maybe we can get a feel. When we talk about cybersecurity, the first thing that maybe comes to mind is corporate concerns. We hear all the time about different companies being hacked, or member data or customer data being shared or accessed incorrectly. And so maybe just by a show of hands on your camera, who has a loved one or a friend who has been scammed by somebody through an email or something of that nature? How many of you know of somebody that's experienced something like that? I think probably all of us have maybe anecdotal information about somebody who's been taken in by somebody committing fraud through email or through maybe texts or different ways. And so cybersecurity isn't just a corporate concern, it's an individual concern. And Kiwanians are as targeted as anybody else, maybe more so. Individuals who have a volunteer spirit and want to help people are probably susceptible to individuals that want to take advantage of that spirit and try to use it to their own ill will as part of that. And so we want to kind of talk about what the kind of what the hallmarks of cybersecurity or what the hallmarks of scams that we might see as part of that. We'll talk about why we as humans are kind of geared to fall into the trap of scams that come along, and we want to give you some tools, most importantly, of how you can know what something might be fraudulent or when a scam might be coming through, so that you can know what to look for, the red flags to look for, and also what steps and measures to take as part of that. So talked about as humans, we have two real kind of features about our personalities and the way we interact with reality that really kind of make us again susceptible to being exploited by individuals. And so one of those is our fight or flight response, and the other one is a limited memory recall. Now, obviously, those are variable to each person, but we all have probably a baseline of how we kind of deal with those sorts of things themselves. And so we'll take both of those in turn. So when we talk about that fight or flight mentality that we have, obviously we all have that sort of, we're all geared or wired towards that. That's what's kept us safe for, thousands of years, is that, a bear comes at us and attacks us, and we either learn to fight and protect ourselves, or we learn to run away. As humans, we're wired to kind of deal with things that way. Well, because we're that way, we are susceptible to being hijacked because of our emotions as part of that. And so again, as humans, we react to everything very emotionally at the start. That's the way our brains work, and we'll kind of take a look at the biology of that here in a second. But again, you can see a stat there. More than half of people struggle with how to monitor their emotions and handle them as part of that. And so, obviously, again, that's almost half the population that maybe has difficulty or challenges as part of that. And so, because we're that way, that increases our likelihood of being targeted by somebody and falling for the scam that they might be running as part of that. So So, nefarious individuals, scammers, people that are running these types of fraud events, they're they're leveraging our emotion as humans to be able to scam us through different ways. And you can see some of those ways listed there. We'll learn about phishing, what phishing is, and the different channels that we can that can be kind of promulgated through as part of that. But again, it's not just emails; it's text messages, phone calls. They're very scammers are getting very clever in how they deliver that fraudulent information to us, and all of that's to kind of leverage variety to get us to not expecting what we would kind of the hallmarks that we would see as part of that. So let's talk about specific emotions. Maybe in the chat, you can type in, what kind of emotions do you think that scammers are trying to elicit as part of that? I've put one up on the board, one up on the screen here as part of that. But what type of emotions do you think, a scam artist might be trying to incite in you as part of that? So fear, making you afraid, obviously is a part of that, and is something that they can play off of. Sympathy, somebody put in there as well. That's a good one. Um, making us happy. It doesn't have to be just a negative emotion. It could be something that elicits joy in us. We get an email that says, "Hey, you've won $1 million or something. Click on this link or whatever." So it doesn't have to be just a negative emotion. It can be something that again, anything that elicits an emotional response from us. Sad, obviously, another uh, negative emotion there. Ashamed. You see these emails come through sometimes, and they purport to know that you've been doing something that you wouldn't want to let people know about or something, and so they trade off of that feeling of shame that might happen. And then angry, certainly playing on all of these different emotions that again might cause you to have that fight or that flight or fight response uh, to to react right away. And so, panic's a good one as well. Somebody mentioned that. Um, yeah, somebody mentioned they have curiosity, and that makes them open the oddball emails, and that's good. I mean, you're exactly right. Sometimes we get emails that have very little information in them, just a link on there, and you're like, "Oh, what's this about?" So maybe you kind of push aside your better judgment on that and click on that, and so that's a good one also. So all of these again are kind of emotions, high impact emotions that scammers are trying to leverage. So let's talk about the biology of that. There's a reason why we as humans kind of react this way to things. So think about the spinal cord, the way our brains are wired. We receive stimulus in to our brain. Our eyes are taking in information, our ears are taking in information. All of our other senses as part of that. So we're receiving information as part of that, and so then those messages, those electrical impulses go into our limbic system. You hear some people talk about the lizard brain and how that works and kind of reacts to things. Again, that's our way of having protected ourselves or whatnot. But it goes through our limbic system, and if we're not careful, then our own biology just says, "Okay, I'm going to react to that right away." Well, when we do that, we leave ourselves open to not considering all of the consequences or what's going to occur as part of that sensory data that we've taken in as well. And so, a better way to really do that is to add rationality into that, add some time and consideration as part of that. So you'll see that when we add time in, when we add consideration in as part of that, then we have a much better way of really handling that emotional stimuli that we've taken in as part of that. And so, but again, there's a biological reason that we react the way we do, but we can certainly implement ways of counteracting that knee-jerk biology as part of that. So we talked about our fight or flight response as part of that. The other bug that we have as humans or as people is that we've got a limited memory recall. Most of us do anyway. If you're like me, you're probably finding that ability is getting less and less every day. I used to be able to recall things right off the top of my head. Now, if I don't take notes and good specific notes, then I have a hard time remembering what it is. And so our inability to remember long, complicated information is another aspect of our behavior or the way we're wired that scammers can take advantage of. So, obviously, it's hard for us to remember complex, uh, strings of characters and numbers that don't have any relation to something that we understand. They're non-contextual, and so we got an example of that there. That password that's shown there, the 6P star, and so on and so forth. That doesn't make any sense to us, and so without having that kind of memory, um, that attachment to memory to be able to remember what that's for, it's hard for us to recall that or remember it. Uh, and then for that reason, we tend to create when we create passwords, we tend to create something that is easy to remember, that makes sense to us, that has relation to something that we have, and again, something that's simple or that is easily recalled. And then even on top of that, when we create those simple pieces, we use them over and over because it's not just remembering that short string that we created, but hey, if we can remember that one, let's just remember it for everything else that we do as part of that. And that again, that makes sense as human beings. It makes sense that we do that, but it does allow us to leave ourselves open to being taken advantage of by scammers and people that would use our information to their own purposes. And again, you know, allowing ourselves to kind of use that limited memory recall by creating unsafe or easily broken passwords, that puts us at risk by people that would use that information. So great. We've kind of identified why we're susceptible to that. What are the things that put us at a disadvantage as part of that? Now let's talk about some constructive things. So how do we fix those bugs that we have as human beings? Well, talk about that fight or flight response. And the first thing we can do, again, we already talked about it, is we can add time to that equation. So you can see there just four kind of tips or four types of tasks that you can do anytime that you're dealing with an emotional or a call for emotion. On something is to stop. Again, take a breath in, consider or think about it, and then respond. This comes into handy, or this is handy in lots of different ways. You think about if you receive an email, and let's say that email irritates you or frustrates you. If you're like me, my kind of my impulse is to type a response right away, and maybe it's not the most productive or helpful response if I do that. Well, adding time into that equation will help us in considering that. And it's the same thing with kind of thinking about scams and fraud and attempts to steal our identity and data. Is when we add time into that equation, it's going to help us do that much better. So you can see again, we receive stimulus. The normal way that we handle that is we react right away. Well, when we do that, bad things happen. We want to again put some time into that as part of it. So again, when we receive that stimulus, our our impulse is to react, but again, let's add some consideration into that. You get that, step away from, if you have to physically step away from your keyboard and just take some time to think about it or leave it in your inbox, then that's okay. Just leave it and come back. Or if you need to not answer it right away and do some checking on things, which we'll talk about how to kind of verify things separately, that's a good way of doing it as well. So just introduce some time as part of that. And then when we respond, we can feel better that we've taken some consideration and some we've been diligent in trying to determine, is this an okay message? Is it okay for me to interact with this part of it? So again, time's the big thing as part of that fight or flight response. Think about limited memory recall, that second bug that we have. And it's very simple. Let's create strong, complex, unique passwords. Again, let's make them longer. Let's introduce variables into them. And again, let's not reuse them. It's just like those of you that have an investment or a stock portfolio. The name of the game is diversify, and so you don't want to kind of attach all your online profiles to one password or username, because if that gets broken, or if that's hacked into, then they're going to have access to everything. So we need to try to create long, unique or different passwords per each account as part of that, and they should be complex. They don't necessarily have to be contextual as part of that. Well, that's easy for me to say, right? You say, Bryce, I'm never going to remember RZJ9TKP69. That's just, there's no way. I'm going to have to reset my password every time I go into a system to try to get into that information. Well, that obviously that's certainly true, and we all experience that. And there are services that have come along that will allow us to kind of deal with that. And we're going to talk about using a password manager here as part of that. So let's move in from there into talking about protecting your account. So you can see this grid, this colorful grid on the screen as part of it. And if you kind of look at this, you kind of go back to your high school mathematics class, and you think about a Cartesian plane, a plane that's got a x-axis and a y-axis as part of that. And so if you look at the top left corner in that purple where it says instantly next to the 4 and numbers only, what you can take from that is if you make a password that is 4 characters long and has only numbers, that can instantly be the time that it takes for a hacker to crack that password is instantly. It takes them no time whatsoever. So you can see as you just go horizontally across that graph, as you add lowercase letters, if you add upper and lowercase letters, if you have numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and then if you add a special symbol, again, even if you've done all that and if you only have 4 of those characters, look how much time it's going to take a hacker to crack that. No time at all, right? Instantly. So again, as we move farther on the X and the Y axis on that, you can see how more complicated it becomes for a hacker to crack that. And until you get to the point where if you've got a password that's 18 characters long and includes numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and and a symbol as part of that, it's going to take them 26 trillion years to crack that as part of that. So variability is the name of the game when you're talking about a password. The longer you can do it, the better. And the more complex you can do it, the better as well. And so somebody mentioned they made it to 5 minutes. So yeah, it's certainly kind of eye-opening when you think about that. But again, just as you increase the variability of your passwords and the information that's in it, that will increase the protection that you have as well as part of that. And so things to think about when you're creating a strong, unique password. Again, make it a random character string. If you can help it, don't do, a phrase and then a couple of numbers or whatnot. Really mix it up as part of that. Make it 12 or more characters. A lot of websites are going to that. They're requiring some require 8, but a lot are starting to go to 12. Again, to combat that ability for hackers to use technology to try to crack that information. Use at least 3 of those types: a number, an upper or lowercase letter, and a character of some kind. So include at least 3 of those. If you can do 4, that's great. But again, you want to make sure that you include at least 3 of those, because again, you want to make it variable. You want to make it more complex. And again, use a password for each account, a different password for each account that you use. Again, there's an example of that one. That's why we kind of point that out. As you can see, we've got all of the hallmarks of a strong password there. We've got the lower and uppercase letters. We've got some numbers in there. We've got some special characters. And so that will make it much more difficult for them to crack. It's also a longer string as well. Some other hallmarks of a unique password: you can use a unique phrase. We've talked about the contextuality of passwords. It doesn't have to be all just gobbledygook. You can, make a unique phrase. But if you're going to do that, again, use 12 or more characters. Include three of those types of characters: upper, lowercase letters, a number, and a special character. And then make sure, again, you're using a different password for each account. So there's an instance of a phrase that could be used. The Indy Colts need a left tackle. .1202 exclamation point. So you can tell where we're from, obviously, but obviously you've got a mixture of lower and uppercase letters. You've got special characters. You've got some numbers in there. That, to me, I may remember what that phrase is, but as a hacker, probably somebody's going to find it hard to know which is uppercase and which is lowercase, where the numbers fall in as part of that. And so phrases can be helpful for memory recall, but also, you can practice that complexity as part of it. So spaces, I don't think, are normally counted as characters. You could do an underscore. A lot of times websites will tell you the characters that they allow or they recognize as a special character. And so sometimes, a ampersand might work for one site and it won't work for the other. So normally they'll tell you. And a lot of sites have gotten good at doing a validation check on a password. So if it doesn't match what it has to have, it'll tell you as part of that. So spaces or carriage returns aren't usually counted as part of that, but an underscore might be. Just you want to kind of pay attention to what it tells you a character, an acceptable character is as part of that. So somebody mentioned two-factor authentication. They must have seen my slide deck, because we're going to segue right into that. And so two-factor authentication is a big protection that really you should, if it's given as if it's given as a feature to your login profile for a website, you really should take the opportunity to go ahead and enable it as part of that. And so when we talk about two-factor authentication, maybe you've heard that phrase before and you don't know what necessarily it means. Well, factor one in that instance is the username and password. We're all very familiar with that access piece, entering in the username and password. But many websites, a lot of websites, have moved to using a second separate way to authorize or authenticate your identity as part of that, something that's not connected to the username and password as part of that. So we'll talk about a couple of ways or a couple of tools that you can use to do two-factor authentication. So before we get into kind of the Microsoft app, a lot of websites use a text code or a phone call as your second authentication method as part of that. You probably are all familiar with that, where you've seen, you try to log into your bank and it sends you a text that has a special code in it. And you type that in, and it allows you to log in. And a lot of sites still do that, but more and more are moving to other ways to do it because scammers have become so clever in their ability to spoof that aspect of it as well. So using a multi-factor authentication program or application is a good way to go. In two of them that you might have heard of is Microsoft. They have Microsoft Authenticator. Maybe if you work for a corporation or a university or something like that, they might use something of that where that nature where you log in and it sends a prompt to the application on your phone, and you have to approve it on your phone, and that allows your login to go through. And so that's a way to confirm that the person that's logging in has access to that second authentication method. And so that's a good way. We see that becoming more and more prominent. Google has an MFA app as well. And again, both of these are free. They're simple to use. They're available on multiple platforms or multiple operating systems for your phones. And so both of those are good ways to make sure that you're using a second authentication method to protect your login, so that it's not just your username and password that's protecting your identity online. Again, we talked about the complexity of passwords, and we certainly don't expect, it's not realistic to expect that you're going to remember every long string of password that has a bunch of letters and numbers that don't really mean anything. So use a password manager as part of that. You can see, for example, Keeper. That's what we use as staff with Kiwanis International. We use a service of all called Keeper. And there are lots of other different ones as part of that. Some, many have costs, but having something where passwords are stored securely. We're not talking about writing down your passwords on a piece of paper and sticking it away in your desk or something like that. We're talking about using a service that allows you to securely tuck away those passwords, tie them to a particular login, and then recollect them or recall them when you need them as part of that. And so adding that ability to store your passwords there, again, in a secure environment is probably the only way that you're going to be able to handle having those long, complex passwords. So we've talked about some tools. We've talked about the reason why we fall for these types of scams and some of the practical or technological tools that we can use to sort of manage that. Let's talk about just some of the common sense or the observational ways that we can check for scams that come across to us through technology. So when we talk about phishing, when we talk about phishers as part of that, these are the term phishing or phishers really kind of denotes individuals that are just kind of sailing around, going around and trying, arbitrarily information to try to gain people's access to people's profiles. Maybe it's from information that they've gained from, areas like the dark web and things like that, where passwords have been put out for people to purchase. And so scammers will purchase these hacked accounts, and then, they just try it against different websites. And if they can get in or get access to it, then great. And if not, they just go on and try somewhere else. So when you think of phishers, you really are thinking of people that are kind of just going around. They're trying anything that they can. They're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so when we have unsafe practices with our login information, that makes us susceptible to it as part of that. So So what phishers do, these scammers do, is they create websites to look exactly like websites that you would expect to come across if you were doing a transaction of some type. And uh, these websites can be sent to us in emails. They can come up through texts. They can come through a whole different variety of things through QR codes and things like that. And so, these websites are created and the links are shared with people. And then if you click on that link, uh, different things can happen depending on the type of scam that they're trying to run as part of that. And so, knowing that there are sites that are created for nothing more than to capture your information and do something nefarious, either to you or with your information, knowing what to look for is an important part of having a secure online presence. And a lot of times they create these sites to look just like a legitimate site as well. And so, but there are things that we can keep an eye on that will tell us, hey, this is a site maybe not to be trusted as part of that. So we're going to talk about that itself. So you look at this and you look at, this looks like a PayPal site. It asks for an email or phone number or a password. You've got the password reset. It's even got a QR code as part of that. This looks like a trustworthy PayPal uh, PayPal page as part of that. But if we look closer, if we take a look at some of the pieces of information that are shown on here, we can determine very easily that this site is a scam site, that this site is not, this isn't a site that we want to kind of do business through. So probably the biggest thing there is if you noticed at the top, the URL, the web address up there says www.paysites.com. It does have PayPal later on in that URL, but notice that the website domain says PaySites. That should raise a flag. That's not something that we would expect to see through PayPal as part of that. And so that should kind of raise a warning for us when we see that. What do you think this phishing site is trying to do? And in the chat, maybe you can include that as well. When you look at this, what do you think the scammer is trying to do when they have somebody visit this website as part of that? Are they trying to get somebody to send them money? Are they trying to, you know, steal a person's social security number as part of that? What do you think that they're attempting to do as part of this? So again, as the scammer has purported themselves to be PayPal. They're playing on somebody's expectation that they can come to PayPal and do a certain transaction. So Sue in the chat has indicated get access to your account. That's exactly right. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to get you to think that you're at PayPal and go in and put your email address and then that password that you've created for PayPal in that information. And what they're going to do then is when you enter that, it's going to capture that information. And now they have your login for PayPal. They can go in, they can log in just like you would log in and access your PayPal information as part of that. So sometimes it's as simple as just a way to capture your data that you wouldn't normally share with anybody, but because they've done it in a way that it looks like a legitimate site, now they have access to that information. So let's talk about the pieces of a website address. And so we can know kind of what we're talking about. You can see on there that HTTPS :/ is the protocol as part of that. And obviously that, when we see that S, that denotes security, always an important aspect of an online retail site or anything where there's secured information as part of that. You see that www, which is the subdomain, and then Starbucks, the section after the first period, Starbucks, that's the domain. I see another one here. Again, that protocol, the subdomain, which isn't always www, and then the domain, which is Starbucks as well. And then you can see sometimes we see a path listed on there as well. Maybe you go to starbucks.com and then you want to go to locations. Well, that path might be after the slash starbucks.com/locations or something like that. So we've got the protocol, the subdomain, the domain, and the path. The domain is normally what you want to take a look at. That's what you want to kind of really keep an eye on, because that's one of those areas that can really tip you off to a site not being legitimate. And a lot of times that's kind of where the detail, we talk about the devil's in the detail. That's where we can kind of point that out as part of that. So we look at that. And again, Starbucks, that's what we, if we visit the Starbucks website a lot, starbucks.com, that's what we've kind of expect to see as part of that. It's spelled correctly. It's exactly what we would have experienced going to their website as part of that. But what if we get a website that says www.star-bucks.com/menu? Looks very similar to the site that we just looked at. And if you're reading this speedily, again, if you're just using that kind of quick scan of that, you might look at that and say, oh, that's normal starbucks.com website. But there's a big difference. Somebody's gone in and set up a domain that looks just enough like Starbucks to make you feel safe with it, but it's going to take you to a completely different place as part of that. So that's an important part of watching to make sure that that the website that you intend to go to is actually the website that you're reaching as part of that. And so that's a flag that you can take a look at to make sure, is this a legitimate site? Sometimes the path can be involved in that as well. If I expect to go to Starbucks, maybe I see a site that says payme.com and then it has a slash after it that says Starbucks. Well, if I'm not paying enough attention, then I might look at that and just see the Starbucks and say, oh, it's okay, I can go through. We want to make sure that we're being mindful of that part. So sometimes the path in conjunction with the domain can give the legitimacy or illegitimacy of the website. It can give it away as part of that. So we always want to monitor. We always want to take a look at where we're going, the link that we're going to, before we click on it. You can always hover over that link if it's an email and see where it actually points to and make sure it's going to the place that you expect it to go to as part of that. So let's try it out. We've got a website here, amazon.com/GP/bestsellers. We look at that. Amazon spelled correctly in there, right? It's got a path there that that makes sense as part of that. And so we look at that, and in looking at it, there isn't anything. There's no calling card really that jumps out to us that says, "Hey, there might be an issue with this" as part of that. We've got the protocol there, the subdomain, the domain, and then the path as part of it. So we've taken a look and we've kind of just considered each part. Each part seems to be, on the up and up as part of it. So we may feel fairly comfortable with that URL. So let's take a look at this URL and look at it. Is there something that would give something away to this? Is this a fishy email? Is this not? You can put in the chat. What is it that might give away something as part of that? Somebody's mentioned a spelling error there. Where's the spelling error at? Is it the EN-US? Windows seems to be spelled correctly. So I think as you look at it, you'll notice that Microsoft is spelled incorrectly. It's Microsoft as part of that. So when we see that, we know that there's something not right with that website address. It's trying to pass itself off as something that we weren't expecting. And so that should raise a red flag to us as well. So finally, let's talk about some common ways that the scammers try to get our data or try to trick us as part of that. And so one way is called a peer-to-peer attack. And so this leverages peer-to-peer payment applications or platforms that allow you to friend money to somebody as part of that. And so you see on the screen there, there's an example of a message that you might get that says, hey, we're notifying you that we saw a transaction. Do you think this is fraud? If so, reply no as part of that. So what happens is that the hacker sends this message purporting to be, this system that's generated this message to a target. The target's going to reply no, and then the hacker is going to call the target saying, "Hey, I'm with the bank. This is a legitimate request. We need to get your username so that we can take care of this for you." Then the hacker initiates a password reset on the target. They'll ask the target to provide the code that's received as part of that. And then once they've done that, they have access to the person's profile. So we read that and we think, oh, well, somebody asking for that information, that seems kind of suspicious. But again, these people are very clever. They're good actors. So when they call, they don't sound like some, villain that you would kind of point out as part of it. These people are very they're con people, and so they know how to pass themselves off as professionals or as support people, and so they can play upon they want to get you comfortable so that you will feel free to give them the information that they're looking for. So what are some things we can do to protect ourselves on a peer-to-peer attack? Obviously, turn two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication onto your accounts. Don't share any of the codes that you receive with the provider that you receive that text from. Don't share your username and password with anybody. If someone from your bank calls, a lot of times you get emails from your bank now that says, "We will not call you for this information." And that's an important thing to remember as part of that. Hang up. If you get a call like that, call your bank back directly and ask them to confirm that they're looking for that information. They're not going to reach out to you preemptively to do that. And so you can check with them and say, "Hey, are you trying to reach me for that?" But always get that number from a secondary source. Don't get it from something that the hacker might have provided to you. And again, banks are never going to do that. They know what scammers are trying to do. It's also a scam called friending. So maybe a hacker will find somebody whose privacy settings aren't as secure on a social media account like Facebook or Instagram. They're going to send the target, the person that they're trying to hack, a friend request. That person might recognize the name of the friend request and they accept it. And then because now that you're friends, the hacker might send you an instant message through Messenger or some other way that has a phishing link in it, just like that PayPal site that we saw. They may send you, a link that you can then click on. And so because you consider them a friend, you're comfortable in giving them that information. So some things we can do to, again, protect ourselves from a friending scam. Again, very similar to what we did on the peer-to-peer. Again, turn on that multi-factor authentication. Confirm some secondary way that that request is legitimate as part of that. If you find that it's not, reject it right away. A lot of the social media sites have the ability or give you the ability to report fraud as part of that. Take advantage of that. If you know that that's the case, or you feel relatively confident that's the case, don't just forget about it so that they can go and try to target other people, or maybe try to target you at a later time. Report them. Use the tools that are built into those systems to be able to report that information. And you see all these videos a lot of times where people will interact with the scammer just to have fun with them or something like that. Don't do that. We want you to be safe, and who knows what cracks that people can get into by just continuing to have a conversation with you as part of that. You may be having an innocent conversation that's kind of just stringing them along. but they may be, gathering information somehow just in the course of your conversation. And so, if you receive a scam email, get rid of it. Don't respond back and have a back and forth, to entertain or anything like that. I can understand the the humor in that sometimes, but really it just invites risk as part of that. So think about one of the things, QR codes. A lot of times, especially once COVID hit, and a lot of restaurants went to touchless service. A lot of times, they put their menus on a QR code on the table, and this is an area we can see risk as well. It's nothing for somebody to come along, have a sticker with a QR code to a phishing site on it, stick it on the table, and then when you go to scan that information, uh, you're taken to an illegitimate site as part of that. There's nothing to stop them. So you might go there, it collects your payment information as part of that, and so it might redirect you to a payment website. And so a lot of times what will happen, what's indicated here is that let's say a sticker's put down and it takes you to a phishing site. Well, that site may purport to be how you pay your bill for a restaurant. So you go to that site, it's gonna eventually take you to payment, but in the intermediate time, it's gonna collect your payment information. So it's gonna store that, and then it's gonna allow you to pay your bill just like normal. You'll be able to leave because your bill shows as paid, it's been paid, but in the meantime, as part of that, the hackers have collected your payment information for use later on. And so QR codes are a clever way for people to have you click on or go to a site that you might not go to all the time. So really, if you look at these, again, there's a sticker. Anybody could have accessed that table and stuck that sticker on and had a QR code that would take you to a site that would do something malicious to your information. If you get a QR code on your bill, that's probably a little more safer because it's been printed by the business or the restaurant you're at. It's coming off of their register. It's tied to an actual bill as part of that. And so knowing when a QR code is safe and when it's not is a good way. You don't, QR codes are there to be helpful, to allow you to do things in an easier way, but we need to be deliberate about how we use them and when we use them. So again, when you receive a QR code on an email, you don't have the ability to really look to see where that's taking you as part of that. So QR codes that come through in an email, always be suspicious of those, because normally most times if an email wants to take you, if they have a link for you to go to, they're going to give you that link, right? So that you can actually see what the information or where you're going to. With a QR code, you can't really figure out where it's going to take you unless you scan that with your camera. And so always be mindful of QR codes that come through on emails. That's going to, that should be something that's very suspicious. And again, you can't be sure. So if you're not sure, get rid of it. Don't interact with it as part of that. So we'll look at these things. We look at, an email that might be received. And so some of the things we've learned here, we should be able to figure out, is this a legitimate email or not? You might take a look at that. Some of you might have already pinpointed some of the reasons why this might not be a legitimate or a safe email. What are the red flags as part of that? Well, the email addresses that it's coming from is suspicious, right? It doesn't have Amazon in there at all, except for the name of the email, but the email itself is very unusual. It says payment temporarily disabled or temporary disabled. Well, it has a misspelling on it, but it's also playing on that fight or flight reaction that you have, right? It's trying to elicit an emotional response from you. Notice that in the message below, we've placed a hold on your Amazon account. So it's telling you, hey, you've got to deal with this right away. It's drumming up fear as part of that. And then it wants to take you to another place where you can enter your payment information. So these are all hallmarks of an attempt to elicit a response from you and then get your information so that they can use it for other purposes besides what you indicated. So we've had several phishing attacks on districts and clubs. It's not just individuals. Because we're a volunteer organization and we want to market ourselves to communities so that people know what we're about. Hackers have used our desire to get our information out against Kiwanians sometimes. So here's an instance where a crowdfunding story or article was sent out to individuals, and you can see this is about a little boy named Daniel who was diagnosed with a disease, and tells a story that plays on our sympathy. Somebody mentioned sympathy as one of those emotional aspects. Talks about that and the need for donations to be received as part of that. And so you can see they're using all the tools that we've talked about. They're trying to play on your emotion. They give you a sad story to, again, drum up that feeling, and then they're giving you a link for you to go in and make a donation as part of that. And so that's an actual scam that was used on a club, and the scammers got quite a bit of revenue from that as part of that. And so that's just one example. We have seen in the past where clubs or districts have put contact information out there for their officers, and it certainly makes sense that you would want to do that. You want to make it possible for your members to reach out and get information. But what scammers can do is they can use programs to go and skim the information, all that information off of a website, and then they can use that to do identity theft. They can pass themselves off as a governor or a past governor or something like that, and they can use that information to be or to pass themselves off as that person. So the better thing to do, if your club or your district has a website and you want people to be able to contact individuals, your executive officers, put a contact form on there so that none of their personal information is displayed. The person that wants to get in touch with the district or the club, they can put in their information, send an email. You can route those to the appropriate people, and that way that information, their personal information, isn't shared as part of that. So always use a contact form rather than put the information out there. And always use a CAPTCHA as well. That CAPTCHA is the little plug in there that will protect your contact forms from bots and programs that will go out and just put information in there as part of that. And so you can use CAPTCHA. Always use CAPTCHA on your forms to protect yourselves against spam and bot submissions. See, here's another attempt that happened. Somebody passed themselves off as past International President Art Riley, asking for some Amazon gift cards for a service project that we're doing. And somebody responded and provided them gift card codes as part of that. And you can see some of the things that gave it away. It does have Art's name, but the email address doesn't really make sense. It's asking for urgency. It's trying to get you to act right away. There's grammatical errors in there. It's asking you to do something. So again, now that we know kind of what to look for, we can see all the hallmarks of that part. So here we're at the end of our time. Just some cyber prevention tips as part of this. Slow down. Remember that. Two-factor authentication, password manager. Again, if you're not quite sure about something, throw it out. If there's an email that you don't know if it's legitimate or not, and you suspect that it might not be, throw it out. The person sending it will reach back out to you again, or you can connect with them and make sure that it's legitimate. Again, QR codes, watch for those. If somebody's sending something from a company website, verify it a separate way. Always keep your software up to date. Use a antivirus software as part of that. Be careful with attachments that come in. Always use your antivirus on attachments. And remember, mobile devices can be just as much at risk as your PC or your laptops or anything like that. So be diligent when you're using your mobile devices as well. So 3 last rules to remember: stop, look, and think. Remember, introduce time into the consideration of something so that you have time to really deliberate on what it's asking you to do and how you should interact with it. Again, bad things happen when you react right away. Once you add that consideration in, you'll be a happy camper. Look for those red flags that we've talked about. Look for those misspellings. Look for the play on your emotions as part of that. And then three, if you're not quite sure, throw it out. Again, it'll come back around, or reach out to the person that sent it and ask them if it's legitimate or not. But it's always better to throw something away and have to catch up with it than to click on something that might not be legitimate and really put yourself at risk. Lots of information that I threw at you tonight. We've got a whole list of cybersecurity resources online. This is a legitimate QR code. So if you want to scan this with your camera on the screen, you're welcome to do that. You can also go to the website as well that's listed there also. But we've got a lot of cybersecurity resources on there that will help you, again, recall what we've talked about tonight. I know I used up all my times. I didn't leave a ton of time for questions. I appreciate Tom's been answering some of those questions in the chat as part of that. But Sue, I'll turn it back over to you if there's any time you want to give for questions, but I understand we're at the end of our time. So appreciate everybody letting me present this to you.
Thank you, Bryce. We appreciate you being with us tonight. I'm just going to run through the questions really quick. I think that Tom was able to connect all of them for you. Let's see here. And of course, we'll make sure this information is provided to you. Let's see here. IRS stuff, subdomains. I think you got that. I think we had all the questions answered. Did we? I don't believe we missed any. The question was, there was one from Joe about, do hackers and phishers know when we open an email? And Tom responded, generally only after a link is clicked or an attachment is downloaded. That's when they would find out that it's opened.
Sure.
Any other questions? I think every time we do this, I learn something new. It's just amazing. And, as we use authentication, so I'm constantly looking at, my phone for different numbers or stuff like that. But, we get the same type of spam that everybody else does and the stuff that comes through. And the biggest thing, my mom in Indianapolis she'll get phone calls from the police. The police will actually call and say, hey, this scam's going around. We just want to warn you, they're targeting seniors. So that information is out there, and it's around quite a bit. So Bryce put his phone number in our chat.
I
and
did.
You can always
If
reach him.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, check out those cybersecurity resources. But certainly we're happy to help you. So sorry, Sue, thank you for letting me break in there. But
hey, no problem.
Yes, definitely reach out.
So I will clean up this recording as much as I can. And it usually takes about 24 to 48 hours by the time it all downloads everything from the cloud. So we'll get that up, and I'll send you the announcement, and also post it on the Facebook page that it's out there, as well as the link to the Michigan Kiwanis YouTube page. So thank you everyone for being with us this evening. We hope you learned a few things. I think we do. And next week we will do service projects that you can do at your club meeting. So we will look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week, great weekend. Stay warm if you're in a place where it's cold. If you don't have to worry about the heat, enjoy it. But we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.